I said, God, is he the one? No. And what did I do? Text him the next day.
Of course you did.
Text him the next day.
Yeah.
I said, no, we'll come back later. We'll revisit.
We'll revisit. Because maybe, God, you'll change your mind.
Your mind about my path. Maybe you'll change your mind.
Change. I watch it all the time. I have never, ever spoken to a woman who did not know in the back of her mind, but what she chose to do was silence it.
Hi there, I'm Imani, founder and CEO of the Creative Collective and CultureCon, and this is CultureCon Uncut. Today, I have the privilege of talking to the brilliant Fawn Weaver. When people ask Fawn Weaver what she wants her legacy to be, she replies, I don't care. Instead of centering herself in the process, Fawn has made her focus to cement the story of Nearest Green. And in the midst of that journey, has become the first Black American woman to found and lead a $1 billion company outside of sports and entertainment. Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey is the fastest growing American whiskey brand in United States history. It's the best-selling African American founded spirit brand of all time. A New York Times bestselling author, TED speaker, and Harvard certified corporate director, Fawn Weaver is a testament to what it means to follow your dreams on your own terms. Hi, Fawn.
Hello, Imani.
Welcome to CultureCon Uncut.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome.
I feel like you wake up and you're always doing awesome. Is that true?
I always wake up grateful.
Okay.
I always wake up grateful, but I'm slaying dragons every single day. And so I wake up grateful, and then we go from there.
I remember when I first saw you speak in public, it was earlier this year at a women's conference, and I held my breath the entire time
Yeah.
because you were talking about slaying these giants, being so fearless, and
Yeah.
it really made me think about a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena. I know you're familiar, but for those who aren't, I'd love to read just a short snippet
Yeah.
because when I read this, I absolutely think of you.
Hmm.
It says, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer could have done better. The credit belongs to the man standing in the arena, who may come short again and again, because there is no effort without error, who at best knows triumph, and at worst, if he fails, at least failed greatly while daring. And when I see you, I
Mhm.
absolutely see the woman in the arena.
Yeah.
I feel like I wanna go back to Pasadena.
Mhm.
At 15 years old, your life changed forever. So can
Yeah.
you take us back to 15-year-old Fawn?
Yeah, I left home.
Mm.
My parents had a new baby girl, and I was the child who always challenged. I mean, I challenged everything. You couldn't just say to me that, this is fact. You had to prove to me that it was fact. And I think, 15 years of that, my parents were a little over it.
Yes.
And then they had a new baby coming in, or a new baby that was there. I already had a little sister that was 5 years younger than me, and they really wanted the opportunity to raise her
Mm.
very different and to not have anyone in the house that was constantly questioning them and adversely impacting how she would then, you know, go along, right? And so they gave me an ultimatum. Now, I'm pretty sure it was meant to be a bluff, but I'm not the one to be bluffed.
I know that's right.
And so they said you either have to do it our way, this is our home, or you have to leave. And so I don't know that I was there another hour.
Wow. And had you always been that way? I know you talked about answering the phone a certain way, and you were like, "Well, what if
I'm
it's
not
not a
doing
great
it.
day? I
I'm
don't
not
want
doing
to."
it. Yeah, like it was I would always joke that my sister, when she was trying to do something, she would like go out with friends or whatever, she would go out the window, or she'd go out, and I'd go out the front door because I mean, why? Why am I going out of a window? This is what we're doing here. So I was always a challenger, always. I still am to this day. And I'm grateful for that because I challenge everything. When culture says this is how you're supposed to do it, but why?
Mhm.
When the church says this is how you're supposed to do it, but why? And so that's just I've been built that way. When everyone, even my first book, Happy Wives Club, that birthed out of the fact that everybody was making marriage seem like it was ball and chain, that the man always cheats, the women were caricatures, and I was like, that's not my marriage at all. I have an incredible husband. I chose well. That's the key. And, don't compare my marriage to people who didn't choose well. And so, I mean, that is what it is.
That well,
That is what it is. We
shoot,
all we all have
we have a
choices.
part to
We
play.
all have choices. Yeah.
And so you're out in the world, and then at 19, start your
Mhm.
first business. You're
Mhm.
working in PR.
Mhm.
How did that come about? Who were your first clients?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, I was working for a woman by the name of Pat Tobin. She's now deceased, but she was easily that pioneer of PR for Black people, meaning she was one of the first, if not the first, Black publicist, at least the first that I know of, to have huge accounts like Toyota, and like that just wasn't very common back then. I'll be 48 this year, so this is 30 years ago. That wasn't common back then, and Pat Tobin was really, really well respected, and so I was interning for her. And very early on into the internship, and I mean, like, days, because this is just normal for me, I'm always challenging, and she had 2 clients that were going to leave because they hadn't figured out how to be able to get them press, and at that time, the way you really did is you sent out press release, you would kinda hand pitch, but you would hope that someone actually cared. Well, these 2 particular clients, there was really no it just wasn't working for them. And so I told Pat, I said, "Well, how about instead of us going to the press, why don't we go to where the press is already going to be?" So the first example I gave is Playboy Jazz Festival here in LA, huge Hollywood Bowl. I said, "Why don't we completely outfit the room, the green room and the lounges where the artists are already going to be getting interviewed? So then these products are all around it." Well, now we call that product integration or product placement. That's totally normal now. 30 years ago, it wasn't normal. So
Wow.
Pat had no idea what I was talking about, but she was going to lose the clients anyway. And so she said, "Well, just pitch it. I mean, I don't get it, but just pitch it." And I give her so much credit for doing that. And I pitched it to both clients. They didn't understand it either, but they said, "Hey, what we've been doing isn't working, so let's give it a try." We did it. We did it a couple times. They absolutely loved it. And so they had already still determined they were going to leave Pat. And so they said each individually, they didn't know each other, individually came to me and said, "If you decide to go out on your own, then we'll come with you." And so immediately I had 2 clients. Now, if I were to do that again, obviously I wouldn't do that because until they actually left her, I don't know that they would have actually left her, even though that's what they were saying. So really, I stole her clients, which is not cool at all. But I was 18, 19. So
Mhm.
and so that's what I began doing for them. And so I began with these 2 clients, but I learned very early on that overhead is no joke. So I had 2 clients, but I built out a company as if I had like 10. The first 2 were so easy to get. The assumption is then the next 2 are gonna be even easier and the 2 after that. And that's just not how this works.
I mean, you talk about overhead and, so much of entrepreneurship is, well, if I knew what I knew then, and then
Yeah.
you just keep going,
Yeah.
what else would you, if you had known then, would you have done it differently?
I wouldn't have quit.
Okay.
So, what I know now is that no one fails unless they give up first. That's the nature of failure. If you just keep going, you don't actually fail. And so if I had known better, I would have just continued, made the adjustments, went through the very hard period and then figured my how to do it. Now, if I had done that, I might not be doing what I am doing now, or I may have and been even more proficient at it, but PR is still probably one of my absolute strongest superpowers is PR to this day. And so I don't regret having done that and had that company because it's still the basis for how I've built what I do have.
Absolutely. I also have a PR background and, did PR for 10 years. And I tell all of my friends, I think that PR was a business school I didn't even know I was taking because it
Mm,
teaches you how to problem solve
it
in a
does.
very scrappy way.
It does. And PR is very interesting because it requires if you're going to be successful, it requires that you figure out how to tell the same story, the same crux of the story 10 different ways.
Yes.
Because what People Magazine wants is not what Newsweek wants, and what Good Morning America wants is not what CBS This Morning wants. And so being able to figure out how to take your story and craft it and recraft it and recraft it, staying true to it, but figuring out different ways to tell it. So, like PR for me, I will plan next year's entire PR strategy around September or October of this year. And certain parts of the PR strategy will be related to announcements of things that we're not there yet. Which means that between now and the time that it's scheduled on my PR strategy for next year, we actually have to reach that goal. We
Right.
have to attain that goal. So a lot of the things that people are seeing out there about me, about Uncle Nearest, it's something that I wrote into the press strategy last year or the year before that had to be hit and even in order for us to actually tell the story.
And speaking of Uncle Nearest, I love you're in Singapore
Yes.
and you are reading the International New York Times,
Yep.
and what do you see on the cover?
The cover is a headline is the first thing that I see, and it is Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient, help from a slave. And underneath it is a photograph of Jack Daniel. I didn't drink Jack, so I didn't know much about the product, but I knew what the man looked like. I had seen the man enough times. And I see to the right of him a black man. And very quickly, very early on, that story came out, and Black Twitter immediately decided that Jack Daniel owned the slave, he stole the recipe and hid the slave. Now, that wasn't in the article at all.
Right. You know how
But
Twitter is.
but listen, the way that that thing spread around the world in a matter of days,
Mm,
and there was just no going back from that, and I'm reading that, I'm looking at that and saying, "If you wanna hide an enslaved person, you simply didn't include them in anything. You certainly did not document them in writing, you did not take photographs with." And so I looked at that and said and, I think again, this is my challenging side, my rebellious side, said, "That makes no sense. If you're trying to hide an enslaved person's achievements, there is it's not hard to do that.
right.
Just don't document
Don't
any of
show
them.
them.
Just don't show them." So, that sent me down a path that was the opposite of what social media and the press were saying at that time, because social media decided the story was something, and then the press, for whatever reason, followed social media's lead on it.
And you do something extraordinary. I mean, it's so audacious, so bold. You decide you wanna get to the bottom of it,
Yeah.
and you go to Lynchburg, Tennessee,
Yes. Yeah.
and you're investigating. I mean, take us
Mhm.
to Lynchburg. What was that like?
Yeah.
In your book, we're gonna talk about it in a second. You talk about, you're asking questions, you're poking around.
Yeah.
People are like, "Wait, where's this woman coming from?"
Yeah. I it was interesting because once I got over that initial hurdle where people were like, "Why is she here?" It did not take long. This was a matter of hours. And I had a conversation with one of his second eldest descendant. And I told her exactly why I was there. I told her I thought the press had the story wrong. I told her our social media had it wrong. And I wasn't there to harm her family's legacy. And so she began to help me, and she gave me two key pieces of information and contacts. One was one of Nearest's descendants who had been doing genealogy on the family for 30 years, and not just Nearest's family, but also all the other African American families in Lynchburg, because they were all pretty closely tied. And then the other thing she told me was the farm where Jack grew up, where Nearest Green was the master distiller, where we now know Jack Daniel Distillery number 7 was housed. That's where it began. She told me it was for sale. And then she had her cousin call me to take me to go see it.
Stop,
So all of this happened within hours of
stop.
arriving in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And so there was something about someone coming to town and saying, I think the story that the press has picked up is wrong. And I think this is a story of love, honor, and respect. If I find out that that is true, I'm going to I'm going to do the story, and I'm going to do it right.
Mm.
And so I'm grateful that they believed me, and now they have seen that come to pass.
I wanna talk about love and whiskey. Oh my
Yes.
goodness,
Yes, yes, yes.
what a love letter, because to your point, it isn't about Jack Daniel cutting out near a
Not
screen.
at all.
Instead, it's paying homage, centering him in the story.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, the story of Near a Screen?
Yes, Nearest is the first known African American master distiller. He is the only known master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery, distillery number 7. He was the teacher of Jack, the mentor of Jack,
Mm.
and he created this interesting legacy, and that there's only one thing that distinguishes Kentucky bourbon from Tennessee whiskey. And I give Jack and his descendants a great deal of credit for making sure that this was written down, because otherwise it would continue to be challenged, which was that process, which is called the Lincoln County process, that it came in with the enslaved people. And so the only difference between Kentucky bourbon, Tennessee whiskey, both are straight bourbon whiskeys. By legal definition, they're both straight bourbon whiskeys. But the difference, other than geography, is Tennessee whiskey, you must take that bourbon distillate and run it through sugar maple charcoal before it goes into the barrel. It doesn't add anything, which is why it remains a straight bourbon whiskey, but it does remove impurities. That's literally the only difference,
Okay.
and by all accounts, Nearest Green either perfected or helped to perfect that process, and so that is the legacy that we're still talking about today, because Tennessee whiskey would not exist if it weren't for that process, and if it weren't for him teaching a young Jack Daniel. Because the only reason we talk about Tennessee whiskey to this day is because of Jack, because that brand kept it alive, but otherwise, we would have just all fallen into it's just bourbon.
Right.
Like,
Right.
everything's bourbon. Coming out of America, it's bourbon.
Right. And what does this do for the more inclusive storytelling? Because I imagine, nearest green, we have documentation of him,
Yeah.
but I imagine he learned from someone and they learned from someone.
Absolutely. I always refer to him as the first known African American master distiller, because undoubtedly there was someone who came before him. We just don't know who that person or people are, and we may never. What I think is so important about the success of this book, but also the success of Uncle Nearest, is that we know that we were at the start as African Americans. We were at the start of the founding of a lot of brands in this country, a lot of inventions. We weren't allowed to patent our work. We weren't allowed to file for trademarks. We couldn't secure trademarks. And so we have a lot of things out there
Mm.
that it's very likely our ancestors had their hands in. And the success of Uncle Nearest, I believe, is such where you're going to start to see other companies dive into their records and say, hey, do we have a good story here on whoever it was that helped at the beginning? And to try to begin to identify the African Americans in the photos that they have, the old photos they have, and the records they have. And as a person who's been able to watch Nearest Green's descendants absolutely light up as they learned new artifacts the entire way. When I would come across something, I'd be in some state and I'd find an artifact, I'd send out a mass text message to nearest descendants and go, "Look what I found." And so they've been a part of this process from the very beginning, and they are so extraordinarily proud of Nearest Green Distillery, of the legacy of Uncle Nearest, and to be able to do that for them. I would love to see other companies go into their archives and be able to do that for other African American families that are out there, because this isn't unique. So yeah, I'm hoping that more will do that.
Fawn, the fastest growing American whiskey brand,
Mhm.
the best selling African American founded spirit brand ever.
Mhm.
When you hear that, and I know, we saw the Forbes feature and you don't center yourself in that story,
Mm-mm.
but what does it mean to really think about how you're contributing to this larger narrative of Nearest Green?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's remarkable that I was chosen to do it. I think though that I was chosen to do it because I don't really care about the stats. I only care about the stats in and of as much as they give the press something to talk about. And when you're coming into an industry in which people are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to go toe to toe and you can't do that, you really have to have the power of stories like this, people like you, people in the press that'll say, "Hey, I'll tell your story and I'll help you tell your story and I'll help you amplify it over and over and over again," because it's the only way that the playing field can be leveled when you're coming in as an independent person who doesn't have, money up the wazoo.
And we spend so much time, to your point, the stats, these are huge
Mhm.
stats. And we spend so much time, I guess, battling ourselves. Am
Yeah.
I qualified? How is
Mhm.
this happening? I feel like, I read something where you said, I like the pressure. I like a challenge. It's not a challenge to me.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about the mindset it takes to
Yeah.
build a brand like this in the face of people who are like, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I can't say that I like the pressure, I can't say that I like the challenges, I will just say I was built for it.
Mm,
And so that's the difference is I have embraced that my life wasn't meant to be easy, but it was meant to have peace.
mm.
And so it's a little bit of being a still point, finding your still point or creating your still point in a turning world. That's me. What you probably heard me say or a variation of is that if you're someone like a Noah Lyles or a Shakari Richardson or something like that and you that gun goes off and you take off, you're racing. The only thing you have to be concerned about are the people on the side of you. But if you are a hurdler, your whole race involves you jumping over hurdles. I was built as a hurdler. I don't have this I'm not worried about the hurdles being in front of me. That's my expectation. What I have to focus on is what is my response to the hurdles. The mindset of a hurdler is they're never paying attention to the hurdles, ever. It is what are they doing? How many steps are they taking in between? Like do 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 jump, do 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 jump, do 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 do. They're not they're not concerned about the hurdle. And so I think that's where people look at me and go, she doesn't really care about challenges. It's like it's not that I don't care about them, it's that I was built to overcome them.
What is your approach, at the end of the day? Are
Mhm.
you someone who writes down everything you didn't do and it's the first thing that you have to tackle the next day?
Mhm.
Are you someone who stays awake and if you don't write it down, it's in your
Let me tell
mind?
you what I'm not, is
What?
that
You're
person.
not that
Let me
person.
tell you. So, I have a thing, I don't even get ideas and things at night anymore. I used to have one of those journals next to my bed, and I'd write the different ideas, and I realized the majority of those ideas I never did, right? They were all they did was keep me awake at night. And I think that we are a sleep deprived country right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
So a lot of what we're seeing, the lack of patience, the lack of tolerance, that's a lack of sleep.
We're tired.
We're and so for me, I realized, okay, I'd get up, I would write down all these ideas and all the rest of that stuff, but the main thing it was doing was keeping me from getting asleep. So now, and I've trained myself for so long, I don't even get ideas in the middle of the night anymore. But for a while, what would happen is an idea would come to me in the middle of the night and it would wake me up and I go, "Idea, you're awesome. If you're really, really awesome, come back to me in the morning and we'll talk then."
Oh, not
And I
boundaries
go,
for the ideas.
"Oh, boundaries for the ideas." And I go
Wow.
right back to sleep. Because if the idea is good enough, it'll come back in the morning when you're awake.
For entrepreneurs today who are just starting out,
Yeah,
and a lot of them, one, have to get out of that mindset
yeah,
that we're going to just center the problem.
yeah.
After that, what piece of advice would you give to an entrepreneur today who really is just trying to, find some traction?
Yeah, I tell entrepreneurs or especially entrepreneurs to be if you're the quitting kind, don't start
Mm,
because it's a waste of time. There is not a day that goes by that something doesn't happen in my world that would take out a different entrepreneur. I battle so much stuff every single day. I'm in an industry that is absolutely set up to make sure that independents don't grow. And so I am battling companies that are 40 billion, 70 billion, 250 billion. And that is it is just the nature of it. It's not personal to Uncle Nearest. It's not personal to me. That's the nature of the business. Keep everybody out so that we can have everything. Just 6 companies essentially that have almost everything.
mm.
And so every day there's something that I am dealing with, and one of the most important things that I had to train myself to do was to not worry and to not stress. We actually shut down the moment we start worrying because now we can't tap in to the creative problem solving. So I really had to teach myself how to not worry, how to not be anxious and then I had to practice it until such time that it just has become second nature to me. But I would say for entrepreneurs, you have to teach yourself how to not worry because if you don't have and there will always be something to worry about.
Right.
So in the midst of that, it isn't to say things will go easy. No, no, things are going to be really hard. The question is can you train yourself to be able to make sure that what you're always focused on is that mindset and being able to tap in to the creative solutions you need in order to get to the next hurdle and over the next hurdle and over the next hurdle? Can you do that? Because if you're going to get stuck at the hurdles and you're just going to stand there looking at it, which I see a lot of challenges literally freeze entrepreneurs. I mean, they're frozen and they just can't move forward. And it's like being on that racetrack, running up to the first hurdle and just stopping
Right.
and just looking at it. That's what most entrepreneurs do,
Mhm.
especially new entrepreneurs.
And what would you say is the distinction between worrying about it
Yeah.
and preparing for it?
Well, the distinction is that preparing for it is there isn't an anxiety that rises up. There isn't that piece that shuts down the part of your brain that you need to tap into. Your response is completely different. It's
Right.
it's it's not it's not this fight or flight type of thing. You're not activating that fight or flight. It is, okay, I see the problem. I see that the hurdle's in front of me. I need to jump over it. All right, what do I need to do? How many steps does it take for me to get from this hurdle to that hurdle? Do I need to land on my left foot first in order to jump with my right out? That's preparation.
Right.
But the difference is if you run up to it and then you stop because you're concerned about it being there.
Mhm.
And that's it. That's essentially what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They're constantly thrown by the challenges that come their way. But if you're expecting the challenges, but you're also expecting that you will have the ability to overcome those challenges and that every single challenge that comes your way is either preparing you for that moment or it's preparing you for the next great moment that comes closer and closer to you being able to finish your race successfully.
Because the irony is that that challenge is conditioning for what's next.
Absolutely it
'Cause
is.
wouldn't we all just wanna skip it and
Yeah.
just get to the end?
Yeah,
You
but here's the thing, if everybody just skipped it and got to the end, I mean, that is a really boring
It's
society,
a
number
boring
1.
story.
It's a boring story. Number 2, you then have people who think that they are the reason they're successful.
Ooh, Fawn. Ooh,
If you don't have any challenges,
right. You did it all on
you
your
did it
own.
on your own, and then everybody did it on their own. Can you imagine how narcissistic that
We
society would
can't
be?
we can't we're already there. We
We're
can't
we're there even with people believing in God. Could you
w
imagine?
without it.
That's
I
terrible.
mean,
Terrible idea.
you've been in the game 25 years, and I know we don't center the challenges, we don't center the hurdles, but can you talk about being a woman,
Yeah.
being a Black woman in these spaces,
Yeah.
some of the challenges that you have faced?
When I came into the industry, and again, I've got to tee it up with the challenge, I think worked out completely in our favor. When we came into it, everyone who I hired were women in leadership. And until my husband became the CEO of Nearest Green Distillery and all of our tourism and operations rolls up to him, for the first 7 years of this company, every person who led in my company was a woman. And so this industry wasn't used to hearing from us on the other line and there being any power. They were used to us trying, they weren't used to us succeeding. So nobody would make time for women. And when we began, there were really basic things that we needed. We needed distributors, we needed whiskey. In the beginning, we were sourcing our whiskey. We needed bottles and corks and just basic stuff in order to be able to get this business off the ground. And we weren't getting phone calls returned.
Mm.
I wasn't getting my phone calls returned. My At the time, she was my senior vice president of sales and marketing. She's now my CBO, my chief business officer. She wasn't getting her calls returned. Head of whiskey operations, not getting her phone calls returned. So I'm having these conversations with them separately and realizing, oh, this is not a one-off situation here. This is not an anomaly. We're all having the same exact issue. And so I reached into my husband, who at the time was an executive vice president over at Sony Pictures. He was overseeing global public policy and external affairs. He had no time for this, but this was my request to him. I said, I'm going to send you an email and it's going to have all the people that Kate, Sherry, and myself have been trying to contact and a synopsis of what we need from each of these people. Can you please call all of them and tell them that you've got a new whiskey brand that is coming out and this is what you need? And every instance, people that we have been trying to call for weeks, for a month, he would get through either right away or every single one called him back by the end of that first day.
Oh, wow.
And at some point in that call, it would be, "Hey, do you golf? Do you like beer? And so the industry was so bro and that they just the idea of even taking the time to return a phone call to a woman who is trying to start in the industry was of no it was of no interest to them. So this is where mindset comes in. One woman might look at that and be furious and look at that hurdle and literally just stand there looking at it because she's so upset at the disrespect. I, on the other hand, looked at that and said, "Oh, we're gonna be Remington Steel? So all eyes will be on you while I'm over here building and while I'm over here putting together the plan, the PR plan, the marketing plan, the sales plan. I'm gonna be able to do that without a bullseye on my back because they're going to think it's you? Oh, we're gonna ride this till the wheels fall off."
Ooh.
So people, if you look at the first couple of years of Uncle Nearest, when I was in the press, and I was in the press all the time, you'll see me listed as the chief historian, never CEO and founder.
I want to talk about your husband.
Ah,
I love how you all love out loud.
yeah,
You have published books, like you
yeah,
said, about choosing, about partnership.
yeah.
What has that relationship done just for your life?
Oh, he is absolute my favorite person in the world. If someone said, you can choose one person, be on a deserted island forever, you can never get off. It is not only would it be my husband, but I'd actually be grateful. I'm like, let me get this straight. So I get to just chill with this dude for the rest of my life on a deserted
Oh.
island. I would not be trying to come off that deserted island. He is someone who I can sit up and talk with for hours and we could just go from subject to subject to subject and we do it all the time and we just really enjoy one another. He's the person who I respect more than anybody else in the world. If you want to get me from a no to a yes, your only shot is going through my husband. And he will tell you it's still not easy
Right.
to get me from a no to a yes. But if there is a shot, everybody knows, go talk to Keith. And because there's nobody whose opinion I respect more than his. And what I love about our relationship is that I don't believe that anybody was meant to be strong at all times.
Mm.
And so I am able to bring my whole self to this life because all of us are meant to be able to show vulnerable sides and soft sides and I do that with him. And the person who people meet in the boardroom or across, a table when I'm negotiating who can make you a little uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I'm pretty good for that. But that's not the person who shows up in my house.
And he has space for both of those people.
Absolutely.
So, what would you say, to women
Yeah.
who are big and strong and brave and also want to be soft and cared for?
Yeah.
You said a lot about it's the chooser.
Oh, you gotta choose
You gotta
the right
choose.
person
Yeah.
because I trust him with my life. That's the difference. I don't have to worry about him if I show him my underbelly, that he is going to use that against me.
Mm.
And so who we choose is important. But I think where a lot of women make a mistake is that we settle.
Mm.
I wasn't going to settle. And so my marriage now about to be 21 years is the result of me being a completely happy, content, independent woman when I met him. It was very much so a take me as I am, I'll take you as you are. This is not a half plus half equals a whole. This is not a you complete me, Jerry Maguire kind of situation. No, no. He met a whole person.
Mm.
I met a whole person. Marriage is multiplication, not addition. And that's where people get it wrong. It is one times one equals one, not half plus half equals one. The half plus halves are the ones that fail. The one times ones are the ones that go 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. And so we keep trying to bring half.
Right.
Can't do that. That's not
A whole person.
marriage is multiplication. You can date as a half. Don't marry as a half.
Now, when you say settle, do you think people know they're settling?
I do.
Okay.
I do. In your heart of hearts, you know that you're settling. But here's the thing is that most people are trying to find someone to complete them. They're trying to find their better half, not their better whole, their better half. And so what you end up with is a bunch of people that are out there that are just like, "Look, I wanna have kids. It's my clock is ticking, all the rest of it." So you begin to make decisions based on a clock. Well, what if God's purpose in your life didn't involve kids?
Mm.
So you're trying to now rush that could alter your entire purpose.
Fawn, what is it like in your brain? I mean, this is are you have I think you've solved my dating problems in, 30
No,
minutes.
well, I haven't yet, but let me solve it for you, though.
Please.
Let me solve it for you. So, there is and this only works if you're a person of faith, so let me
Yes.
just get that out of the way. There's a prayer that I began praying when I was 20 years old, 20, 21 years old. Very, very simple. I call it a box me in prayer.
Mm,
And it is, "Lord, if this is the door for you, if this is your will, open the door in a manner in which no man can close it, including myself." Most people self-sabotage. Like, they will literally have an open door in front of them. They'll stand in front of the door, and they're afraid to just even peek in. Forget step in, they won't even peek in. The number of people that I have seen walk away from open doors because they feel like they're not worthy enough or they won't be, strong enough to instead of just going don't second guess the open door, just go through it. And so this was literally open in a manner in which no man can close it, including myself,
mhm,
because I understand human nature is to self-sabotage.
mhm.
On the flip side, the second part of that prayer is if this is not your will, then close the door in a manner that no man can open, including myself. So when I spoke to my husband the first time, we were set up by his mother. His mother met me, called him and said, "I just met your wife." And she was relentless.
Come on,
She
mother.
was relentless until I gave her my number. He called me. Like, she worked on this for a minute. And the first phone call, we were on the phone for 3 hours. He nor I are people to be on the phone like this. I'll text with you when I have, but I am not going to sit on that's just not my thing. And it's definitely not his thing. For 3 hours, we just sat on the phone, we laughed, we joked, and we knew it was something special. We got to the end of that call, and by that point in my life, I was 25 at the time, I think, 24, 25, somewhere in there, and I was so confident and comfortable going and having dinner by myself, movies by myself, hanging by my I didn't have to have a man to do any of that. I was a complete whole person when he met me. I had done the work on me. And so we got to the end of that call and I said, "Listen, I know that this has been a great conversation. I know that you think you're going to want to talk to me tomorrow. But if you wake up in the morning and you have no desire to call me, go with that emotion." This is how I ended the call. And I said, "I will not take offense to it because it would be the answer to my prayer. I don't have time to waste. I'm not interested in spending time going out with, talking to somebody who is not going to be my life partner. So if you wake up in the morning and you don't have a desire to call me, go with that emotion."
Ooh, y'all hear this?
It
Wow.
is the hack
Yes.
to finding your one. But here's the thing about that prayer though. You cannot cling on to what he has said that's not you. That's not the one for you. So for us, most people would have that conversation, and if the next day they didn't get a phone call, they would take that super personal, and they're like, "But it was a great call, and I thought that was the one," and like, it would send them in all kind of spiral. Keith didn't call me back for, like, 3 weeks. He really had to get his mind around that
Mhm.
because I was telling him from jump, "I'm happy by myself. And I'm not interested in spending any time with you if this is not leading to marriage."
That is my favorite. I said, "God, is he the one?" "No." And what did I do? Text him the next day.
Of course you did.
Text him the next day. I said,
Yeah.
"No, we'll come back later. We'll revisit.
Uh-huh, we'll revisit because
We'll
maybe,
revisit
God, you'll change your mind.
your mind about my path. Maybe you'll change your
You'll change
mind."
I watch it all the time. I have never, ever spoken to a woman who did not know in the back of her mind, but what she chose to do was silence it. And then it's in her gut, and she chooses to quench that. But if you give God the power to simply close the door in a manner that you can't open it yourself, that means even if you make that phone call, he's not gonna call you back.
Right. How has your faith carried you?
Oh, that it's undergirded everything. There is 0 chance, and I say this all the time, there is 0 chance that what I am doing, where I am, where I see the future of my company, my life, 0 chance if I hadn't chosen the life partner that I had chosen, and if I did not have the faith that even when I don't see what the next step is going to be, there's this animated thing going around social, which I love. I actually put it on my phone, and it's basically this animated character, this sketch, and this person is climbing up a ladder. Have you seen
Oh, yes,
this?
and it keeps
And yeah, but there's no step above until the hand goes up there. And so for most people, they just kind of hold on to the step that they see. And it's like, no, if you go up, it'll be there once you get there. But that is not easy to keep moving forward, to keep climbing up, and you don't see the next step. But that's my day every day, literally every day. And I'm moving at such a pace, to get to what I believe that God has assigned me to do, my mandate in this lifetime. And so I don't have the ability to do what he's mandated me to do and to hold on to the step I can see.
you're such a blessing. I really do feel like the expansive mindset and running away from scarcity and putting your hand up even though you can't see it,
Mhm.
if people would just walk through the door that's been open for them, we
Yeah,
could just save so much time.
we would save so much time.
Fawn, I've got some rapid fire questions
Yeah,
for
yeah, I
you,
love
okay?
those.
So, what is your go-to cocktail to celebrate a win?
Ooh, you know what? I don't have a go-to cocktail. That changes. Last night I was in Portland and I was at this bar and they had this drink and it was pink of all things and it was made with gin and someone
Mm.
said it was absolutely delicious. It had lavender in it, it had something else in it. And I said, "Well, give me that with Uncle Nearest." And it was so delicious. I had everybody in the bar drinking this drink and it was
Ooh.
pink and foo-foo. And I
Ooh.
am not a pink foo-foo kind of person at
But you were
all.
last
But I
night.
was last night.
Okay.
And so I would say when I go, I don't make a whole lot of cocktails at home. I more so drink neat. And but if I go out, I like the bartender, I usually my normal is I will look at the menu, see a drink that looks really, really good that I can swap out with Uncle Nearest if Uncle Nearest isn't already in the drink. That's how I choose my cocktails. I'm like, that one sounds delicious if you swap out the vodka for Uncle Nearest or if you swap out the rum for Uncle Nearest. I just did that before I was in Portland. Where was I? I was in Brooklyn and I was at a restaurant. Same thing. The drink was made with a rum. I swapped it out and it was phenomenal.
Okay, I'm doing that tonight.
Mhm.
What's the best tip for building a great team?
Oh, do not compromise.
Ooh.
Do not compromise because every leader gets a gut check when somebody's not the right person, not the right fit for the culture if you have established the right culture for your company. So I've spent a lot of time establishing and building the right culture, and not everybody's going to fit in it. And
Mhm.
so this idea that we're supposed to create cultures that fit everyone, that makes no sense to me. The culture has to fit me. I'm the leader.
Mhm.
The culture has to fit the company that I've created, and then I have to find people who flourish in that culture. Everybody's not going to grow in my culture. Everybody's not going to love my culture. Well, there's plenty of jobs for them, but I'm not trying to create my company around bringing everybody in. No, I only want to surround myself with the people who this is the culture they want.
Ooh, trying to be everything to everybody. You
Absolutely
will not
doesn't
have a
work.
business.
Doesn't work.
What is your favorite Motown song?
Oh, keep on trucking.
Oh, very good.
Eddie Kendricks.
What is the worst business advice you ever received?
Oh gosh, the worst business advice. Coming into this industry, I wouldn't say that the worst, that there's any worse, but coming into this industry, the way that I built this company was literally disregarding every piece of advice I received. So I'm not saying they're the worst. I'm just saying that there wasn't a single piece of advice for the first 7 years of this company that people from the industry gave me that I didn't disregard.
Fawn, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for having me. I
Of
appreciate you.
course. And before we wrap, of course, we have to do a cheers. Come
Yes,
on,
yes,
the Uncle Nearest.
yes, I am grateful for this.
Oh my
This is my favorite
goodness.
part of every interview.
Mine too. Cheers, Fawn. Congratulations.
Cheers, cheers. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Mm,
It's so good.
it's so good.
I am so grateful that I make a really good bourbon. It would
Right.
really suck if this wasn't really, really good.
What an incredible conversation with Fawn. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to Spotify for producing this episode. Remember, embrace your story, celebrate your wins, and keep pushing boundaries. For more unfiltered conversations with Black culture shifters, subscribe to CultureCon Uncut on Spotify. And if you're feeling inspired, tell a friend to tell a friend.